स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the establisher of universal religion. Let us pray to that divine, supreme being to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. I am speaking on the subject disciplining the mind. This is part 2 of my talk. We are dealing with the most important sense God has given to us. It is mind. If we have conquered the mind, then we have conquered the whole world. Everything is depending upon how much mind is under our control. What we see ordinarily in the world is that we are under the control of the mind. Mind is the ruler. It drags us away into things according to its own way of taste and enjoyment. The senses are under the control of the mind, whereas the mind is not under the control of anybody. This terrible mind is stronger than the strongest. That is why he who brings this mind under control is verily called Deva Deva, God of gods. Man is a soul endowed with a mind and encased in a carnal cage. The mind and the body are the instruments of the soul. Man's superior endowment makes him the master of creation and at the same time a problem unto himself. Using this unique instrument called the mind, man has achieved phenomenal success and has created infinitely more problems for himself. He has been given a superb instrument with the freedom to use it ill or well. But ordinarily, people use it ill, and hence the question of disciplining it. It is not easy to discipline the mind. It requires tremendous skill, tremendous determination, tremendous willpower, and remarkable guidance under a competent teacher. Then it is possible to have some control over the mind. The mind is compared to a monkey. A monkey went mad. Monkey is noted for its extreme restlessness. It cannot remain calm even a moment. That's why it's called monkey. If a man is restless, we'll call him as a monkey. Why you behave like a monkey? So the nature of restlessness is wonderfully manifested in monkey. That monkey went mad and got drunk. Then it was stung by a scorpion. Added to that, it was possessed by a devil. Now you can imagine the state of the monkey now. It is now in a terrible state of turbulence. The human mind is likened to this monkey. By its very nature, the mind is restless. It is insane with ignorance, drunk with the wine of desires, stung by scorpion of jealousy, and is possessed by the devil of an ego. Ego is called the devil. How true it is. Nobody is free from this devil. Somehow it plays tricks even with spiritual people. In the field of spiritual life, we see how people behave in a very egoistic way. Terrible. But we must know it is devil. Then only you will know how to handle the devil. So no wonder it is a Pandora's box. Try to control it, you will find the horrible state of affairs. So how to transform such a mind? How to discipline it? Is there any hope? Arjun puts a significant question to Lord Krishna. Oh Lord, You have taught me so kindly on the yoga of same-sidedness. You have taught me many things, but, oh Lord, it is very difficult to fix my mind. It is fickle, it is violent, it is strong and turbulent. I am afraid controlling the mind is as difficult as taming the wind. How is it possible? Then Lord Krishna replied, Asamshayam mahabhaho mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. Arjun, I understand your difficulty. It is no doubt true that mind is difficult to control. He didn't say it is impossible. You must watch this word. He said durnigraha. He didn't say anigraha. Anigraha means impossible to control. Durnigraha means difficult to control. When he said difficult to control, that means you have got some hope. It is true that the mind is fickle, but it can be controlled by abhyas, repeated efforts. Suppose you are learning a music. Repeatedly you sing the lines of the verses, you will become the master of it. Everything lies in our repeated efforts. Do it repeatedly, with zealousness, not losing hope, trying to be more strong and more strong. So, abhyasa and vairagya, constant practice, and vairagya, dispassion or detachment. We have to have this faculty. Without using the faculty of detachment or dispassion, you can't control the mind. So Lord Krishna concedes to complexity of the issue, but he strikes a hopeful note, a very naughty one though. So, after all, the attempt at transforming the mind is not totally hopeless, and hope sustains man. Lord Krishna gives that tremendous inspiration not to lose heart, not to despair. The root meaning of manas is to think. Thinking is its cognizable form. Is it material or non-material? If you think for long, it causes headache. You feel terrible strain. You are no more able to think. So the mind has something to do with the brain matter. Long lost memories of the remote past can be brought into the surface and experienced as happening here and now, if the bottom layers of the brain are activated by electric impulses. That shows brain has stored up every experience, and these impressions are the material basis for the working of the mind. So, mind is material. In Chandogya Upanishad, Aruni, a great sage, tells his son Shvetaketu, who was deeply interested in spiritual subject, he teaches him, Annamayam hi somya manaha. O Shvetaketu, Annamayam manaha. The mind is formed of food. So whatever the food you take, you are manufacturing the mind out of it. That's why we always insist upon taking the pure food. Or purify the food and take. Or consecrate the food and take. Everything has got significance. The subtle portion of the food eaten rises up and forms the mind. Mind has 16 parts. Now he instructs the aspirant, now you go, don't eat for 15 days. Don't eat. But drink plenty of water, because life depends on water. If you give up drinking water, you will die. Follow this instruction, then come and see me. Those days, the parents were themselves practicing spirituality and would assume the role of a teacher to their children. Nowadays we have to search for the teacher outside, because we have lost that faculty of teaching our children. We depend upon somebody else. Shvetaketu followed the instruction. He fasted for 15 days. On the 16th day, he came to his father and asked, what did his father want him to say now? He has done the fasting. Now, the father asked him to repeat some of the passages from the Vedas. Then the boy replied, Father, I try to remember them, but they do not come to my mind. Only a small part of the mind is left. The father now told him to go and eat food. Then the boy took food, then came to his father. Now he could remember whatever he was asked for. So the conclusion was drawn. Annamayam hi somya manaha. My boy, the mind is a product of the food. Ancient and modern experiments agree that the mind is a material phenomenon. It is very subtle matter. It is the soul's instrument in dealing with the external world. Mind has several agents to gather data, such as the eye, the nose, the ear, the skin, and several servants, such as the hands, legs, etc. Through these, the mind gathers information, sorts them out, and submits them to its master, the soul. The cognitive or active agents have no direct access to the soul. In fact, they are the physical projections of the mind itself for particular purposes. Mind is the immediate instrument of the soul. Being the matter, it acts as a mirror to the soul. The soul's reflection in the mind is called the ego. The ego struck a deal with the mind. He conveniently ignored his source and persuaded the mind to serve him. The mind, for its part, is very obliging to the ego. The mind collaborating with the ego creates all sorts of havocs, what we see in the world today. Though the mind opens inward to the soul and outward to the world, it prefers to open out, for the inward opening imposes a lot of restrictions. It has to be very restrained. You know, restraints are always irksome. So it is only too willing to join hands with the ego, who is quite happy to have such an obliging comrade. Being an upstart with no status of his own, the ego is ever anxious to favor the mind to keep the alliance going. They two together have set up the whole show called the world. This disregard of the spiritual source is the original sin for which man has to pay very heavily. Why we are unhappy? Why we don't experience peace in spite of having everything whatever we want? It is because of ignorance, avidya, lack of knowledge. This is the tragedy of man. There is a saying that the mind can make a heaven of hell and hell of heaven. Only what it often does is to make a hell of everything. So, explaining this, Prahlada, a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, makes a very significant prayer. O Lord, this mind, it doesn't take delight in your sports. It is tainted with sin. It is outgoing. It is uncontrollable, vexed with sex, pleasure, pain, and fear. Such is the state of affairs of the mind. With that mind, how it is possible to think of God? In fact, it even makes us not believe in God at all. We don't want God. We go even to the extent of telling, I myself am God. It is true philosophically, but in the actual sense, before realizing your true nature of divinity, if you call yourself of God, it becomes ridiculous. You realize the truth, then you know what you are really. Again, in the 11th skanda section of Bhagavat, there is a verse which tells, the insatiable tongue pulls the man in one direction, Cupid in another, skin, stomach, ear, nose, the fickle eye, each pulls the man in its own direction, and the hands and feet drag him in their own way. So the total effect is man is torn by this. Such is the mind's power of mischief. There is no question of simply defending your mind. You have to find out, you have to diagnose, where exactly the problem is, then think of the solution. Then problem is solved. Shankaracharya gives a warning to the spiritual aspirants. Beware, beware, there is a terrible tiger called the mind prowling about in the woods of the senses. Keep away from them. That's the warning. From philosophical point of view, the whole world is a mental construct. This may sound fantastic, but a little reflection will convince us that it is not so. Every day, every one of us has an experience wherein the external world disappears. Nobody knows what happens to his world when he is in sound sleep. In the waking state, out there is a solid world. In dream, this seems to be a world existing outside. But that world disappears when we wake up or lapse into deep sleep. What makes this strange phenomenon? In the waking state, the mind and its agents operate, and the external world impinges against us on every side. In dream, the whole world, both the subjective and the objective aspects of it, is only a mental projection. In deep sleep, the mind goes to sleep and the world disappears. Again, when the mind awakens, the world appears. So, the mind and the world appear or disappear simultaneously. As the external world is unknown and unknowable except through the mind, we are driven to the conclusion that the world is a mental construct. In deep sleep, we have no worry or problem. All problems are confined to the two stages of waking and dream when the mind is active. Though the mind is not active, in deep sleep, we do not cease to be. We are there as a witness. Had we not been there, then we couldn't have had the memory of having slept soundly, undisturbed by anything. This witness is the soul that cognizes the three states of existence. The states come and go, and the soul remains the same forever. The next point which we should understand: time, space, and causation. They operate in the waking state in full fury. In dream also they do operate, but on a different scale. There the speed of the time is the speed of the mind, whereas in the waking state the mind uses the senses to measure time, and hence the difference in speed between the two stages that we notice in the waking state. In deep sleep, the mind being dormant, space, time, and causation do not appear on the scene. In fact, space, time, and causation are the constituent factors of the mind. Even in the waking state, when the mind is absorbed in anything interesting, time ceases to be, and with it the other two also disappear. That means space and causation are different aspects of time. In short, mind is time. At the individual level, it is called the mind, and at the cosmic level, Maya. Maya is God's power of creation. Its individualized form is the mind, and is experienced as time. So, Maya, mind, and time are one essentially. Mind is elusive because it is illusory, and that holds the clue to its ultimate conquest. Though illusory, its potential for torment is infinite, and hence the attempt at restraining it. So far, we have been chasing the mind without apprehending it. But the attempt is not futile. In such chases, there are two stages, the negative and the positive. To hunt a fox, we have to draw it first. Here, both the hound and the fox being the mind, the game is hard. But to track it down is the first part. When the mind knows that it is being watched and followed, it will be careful not to run into its usual haunts. A thief who is aware of being shadowed will try to pass off as an honest man. We have so far found the material source, the several haunts, and the elusive nature of the mind. Now we have to see if any transformation is possible. We have analyzed the nature of the mind, the world, and our function, all these things in my previous class as well as this class. Now the impressions that the mind receives and stored up in brain cells, under favorable conditions, they come to the surface. Most of the stuff in stock is unwholesome. We wish very much they were not there, but we cannot wish them out of existence. Under these circumstances, the only course open is to allow the sleeping dogs to lie and undisturbed. Direct the mind into fresh, desirable channels and enable it to acquire sufficient quantity of beneficial impressions. If the old impressions are left unused for long, their power for mischief will be reduced. Even if they raise their head once in a way, the new arrivals will keep them under control. So the mind has to be thus trained and armed with all spiritual practices. And spiritual practices are aimed at that. There are so many ways given to us by the masters of spirituality. The purpose of the religion is to purify the mind. Once the mind gets purified, you get everything. So many ways have been shown to us how to get full control of the mind, how to get it purified. In Bhagavata, it is mentioned charity, duty, cleanliness, non-injury, rituals, fasts and vigils, all these are meant for controlling the mind. Everything has got its tremendous value. All these things we have to apply. Then only it is possible. Charity. We should keep on doing something good. Selfless deed is always encouraged. Giving food to poor people, educating the needy ones by providing food and shelter. These acts will purify the mind. We must help the afflicted, but we should not expect anything in return. Whatever we do it with wholeheartedness, not to expect anything in return for what we have done to others. That way, the selfishness, the poison of selfishness is removed from the mind. Duties and responsibilities, they are to be carried on very diligently. As long as this creation lasts, duties and responsibilities do exist. But in the midst of all this, we will have to make a little time to call upon God. It is very essential to remember Him. Anusmaranam. He must be remembered every moment. That should be our ideal. Most of the time, our mind doesn't dwell upon God at all. Even the little time we spare to think of God, we try to think of other things. But amidst all our activities, somehow we must keep on thinking about the Divine Spirit, who is shining in everyone's heart, who is in everyone's abode. Our heart is a abode. God dwells there. If we don't recognize it, if we don't turn towards God, then we come to grief. There is not so much danger if one can hold on to God. It is very necessary to remember Him. With one hand, we should hold on constantly to His lotus feet, and with the other, we should perform the duties of the world. When all our duties are over, we should hug the lotus feet of God to our heart with both hands. We should be always vigilant in carrying out duties. We should shake off all dullness from within us. Laziness is the worst of all sins. Then cleanliness, internal and external. That's also very important, because God is the personification of purity and perfection. First of all, we have to keep ourselves away from such acts and situations which drag the mind down to exciting objects. Then only our attempt in controlling the mind will succeed. Suppose you earn a lot, but if you don't desist from borrowing more, how can you hope to build up a fortune? The sage Patanjali has propounded a course of discipline, especially aimed at the control of the mind. At present, the mind is scattered into waves. The waves have to be stilled. When the mind is still, the soul will shine in its own glory. The Ashtanga Yoga, a system with 8 limbs given by Patanjali Maharshi, starts with physical and moral purifications and go on to posture, control of breath, turning away from external objects, meditation, contemplation, and absorption in the spirit. It is a lifelong process to be practiced under the guidance of a teacher. But how many people will be able to do that? To the common man, much of these things seem impracticable. Then do we have any other safer and more practicable course? In dealing with the mind, a direct confrontation may be counterproductive. For example, there is a river running at a terrific speed. If the bund is built up straight across, the running river, the force is terrible. It may burst the bund or break the banks. Instead, if proper channels are made upstream, the water can be directed to the desired destination and utilized for working turbines or irrigating fields and for many useful purposes. Similarly is the case with the mind. It has got tremendous force. Tremendous force. So what we should do, we should direct it to lofty and attractive objects. We should feed the mind with the life and messages of Mahatmas, spiritual masters. We should make the mind chant the glories of God. We must give the mind a charming divine form to dwell upon. We should engage the mind in acts of charity. Thus we should keep the mind thus engaged in healthy occupations. Whatever manner you want to do that, you are welcome to do. When these are continued for a considerable time, it will be ready to withdraw from the world outside and look within. Sometimes doing activity in the world, discharging duties and responsibilities up to a certain point. Afterwards, the mind itself gets tired of these things. Well, I don't feel any more interest in this world. I have done enough of it. Let me devote my time now onwards to spiritual pursuits. And they start spiritual practices with dogged determination. And it is possible because now they are very clear, because they have tasted the world, they have experienced, they know to a little extent what is good, what is bad. They need not be duped again. So now they are able to devote the whole mind towards spiritual practices, and they take it very seriously. That is why in that sense, little playing in the world probably is necessary. Probably is necessary. To imprint in the mind that the world doesn't give us real happiness. The real happiness lies somewhere else, not in the world. Not going outward, but turning inward. God is within. He is to be seen within. Happiness is to be experienced within. Peace is to be experienced within. Once we have the taste of real peace and joy, then you will see that peace and joy everywhere. So when the mind is able to look within, it gains a glimpse of its real master, the soul. with whose shadow the ego it was sporting so long. And is at peace. It no more relishes the company of its earlier associates. It is happy and peaceful in contemplating the spirit within. Thereafter, the mind is an obedient and helpful instrument of the spirit. The mind which was behaving like an enemy, which was not cooperating with the soul, now becomes a very good friend and is very helpful in realizing the ultimate reality. That is, mind having gone through disciplines gets itself transcended its material associations and it has surrendered itself to its real and eternal master, the Spirit. That's why Lord Krishna clearly points out in Bhagavad Gita, Uddhared Atmanatmanam Atmanam avasadayet Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu Atmaiva ripuratmanaha. One has to raise one's own mind, oneself. Mind behaves like an enemy. Mind behaves like a friend. So we have to make our mind the best friend of ourselves. We must know how to make it a good friend. How to make it a good friend. Just by thinking it won't become a friend, we have to take some steps. That is, you have to be constantly in touch with people of spirituality. People who practice spirituality. You must be in association with them. Live with them. People get so many vacations, When they get vacations, they go to sea beach, spend time in some excitement. No. During those vacations, get yourself involved in doing selfless activities, in associating yourself with men of spirituality. Live with them. Meditate with them. Pray with them. Talk with them. Discuss with them. Let your whole being be with them, in tune with the spiritual vibrations. Then you will see their marked difference in your mind. Once you go out of that surroundings, you feel that how nice it was. Those vacations I could spend happily, in a peaceful way, in a useful way, in a beneficial way. That's important. So you must enrich yourself. So you must rekindle all your spiritual aspirations. Then go into the world. You are always safe. That is why the conducting of retreats is encouraged, because that is the correct forum where all people can gather and live the life of spirituality to a certain period of time. That way, we should be able to use our time properly, use it consciously. Every act, what we do, every thought, what we think, is very significant. And we should do it consciously. Then we will know the beauty of spiritual knowledge. That's why it is called Paravidya. There are two types of vidyas, Para and Apara. One is superior knowledge, the other one is inferior. But all the knowledge you get in this world, so many scientific inventions, is there any end to that? No end. Do you get any satisfaction? No satisfaction. No full stop. All these are categorized as Aparavidya, inferior knowledge. It is only the knowledge of the spirit which gives a final full stop, which gives full satisfaction, which gives us real joy and happiness. That's why it is called Paravidya. This Paravidya is to be acquired by becoming disciples of the spiritual masters. We have to seek the spiritual masters, and then we have to devote our whole energy in trying to understand the truth. At present, sometimes it may not be possible to find spiritual masters anywhere and everywhere. At times we may have to go to a place where those masters are available. Sometimes they are available through the books. The spiritual masters, their lives and their works have been well recorded. They are our inspirations. As a part of sadhana, it's a worship, so to say, to spend some time in reading those books, thinking about them. Do it everything in a positive way, then all the negative things automatically get destroyed. Thus we will be able to slowly have full control over the mind. Mind knows it has got a master. The master knows it has got mind under its control. Only when it becomes clear, then you can experience the real joy in life. So mind is the root of everything. Let us try to hold on. Let us try to keep that mind properly from the beginning itself. Let us not try to spoil the mind completely and then give medication. You will never be able to rectify it. It is horrible. There is a stage. If it is not too late, then the medication helps. If it is too late, medication also fails. So we should not drive our mind to that state of hopelessness. Hopelessness is the last stage prior to destruction. When there is no hope, there is no question of surviving at all. Probably we may have to think of it in our next life. For this life it is all over. We have to conclude that way. So whatever little we have got, try to save it, try to improve upon, and try to make it our own. Spiritual ideas are very important. Let us feed the mind with spiritual ideas, Upanishadic ideas, and try to meditate on them. It should be followed by good, moral, spiritual life. Then we enjoy the beauty of life. Then we experience the purpose of life. Then we reach the goal. The purpose of human life is to realize God, to realize our true nature. Who am I? I am that. That means that divine spirit. I am verily that. That experience we will get. With these words, I conclude my talk. Thank you.